Over 70,000 Americans dead from drug overdoses in 2017. And it's synthetic drugs from China that are doing most of the killing. China's drug war against the U.S. has been unstoppable. But is the Trump administration changing that? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. America has a drug problem.
Police say 41-year-old Kenneth Crowder ran around naked through this Melbourne neighborhood saying that he was God and performing lewd acts on a tree.
I hope it wasn't that tree. Yeah, these drugs can make you do stupid things, if you're lucky, because sometimes they can also kill you. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, by the end of 2018, an estimated 70,000 Americans will have died from a drug overdose. Drug overdoses are now the leading cause of unintentional death in the United States, more than gun homicides and car accidents combined. So many people are dying from drugs that it's actually driving down the country's life expectancy. And a growing part of that problem is synthetic drugs. At least 30% of deadly overdoses involve a specific synthetic opioid called fentanyl.
It is the strongest opioid-based painkiller on the market. It is 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine and 25 to 50 times stronger than heroin.
According to a new report from the CDC, starting in 2016, fentanyl became the deadliest drug in the U.S., overtaking heroin. More than 2 million Americans are addicted to opioid drugs. Some of them are prescription painkillers. Others are illegal drugs. The problem has gotten so big that in 2017, President Trump declared it a national public health emergency.
My administration is officially declaring the opioid crisis a national public health emergency under federal law, and why I am directing all executive agencies to use every appropriate emergency authority to fight the opioid crisis.
Now, there are a lot of reasons for the opioid crisis, and the issue is complex. And to be sure, if someone chooses to take dangerous, illegal drugs, they definitely have a share of the blame. But one of the biggest reasons for the opioid crisis in the United States is synthetic drugs coming from China. And that's not by accident. It's a coordinated campaign of drug warfare launched against the United States by the Chinese Communist Party. I know that sounds like a conspiracy, but in this case, there's evidence in plain sight. In 1999, Chinese army colonels published a book called Unrestricted Warfare. In it, they acknowledged that China's People's Liberation Army can't directly challenge the U.S. military. So instead, it should use unconventional tactics. They specifically include using drug warfare to harm citizens of the U.S. This 2014 report from the U.S. Army Special Operations Command shows that the U.S. is taking the drug warfare threat seriously, along with a bunch of other threats. In fact, according to the book Red Cocaine by national security analyst Joseph D. Douglas, the Chinese regime has been pushing heroin and opium since the 1950s. Communist regimes have been using narcotics for several decades as a decisive weapon in the ongoing low-level warfare they are waging against Western civilization. To be fair, China had learned the hard way how effective drug warfare can be. In the 1800s, the British Empire had wanted to sell British goods to China in exchange for things like tea, silk, and porcelain. But the Chinese government didn't want any of their made-in-Britain junk, only gold and silver. And then, British merchants discovered that Chinese people were happy to buy their opium under the table. Cha-ching! That led to the Opium War, and the Second Opium War. China was beaten badly, both times. So maybe there's a bit of payback going on as well. So how is the Chinese Communist Party getting their synthetic drugs into the United States? Some of it comes through Mexican drug cartels. 90% of the meth used in the U.S. comes from Mexican cartels, and 80% of that meth is made using ingredients from China. Also, according to this report by the Department of Justice, the main source of illegal firearms in Mexico is also China. Guns and drugs go together like peas and carrots, don't they? Most of the fentanyl in the U.S. also comes from China.
It can go by the street names China White or China Girl.
I'm assuming that's not a David Bowie reference. Though, Chinese fentanyl may have killed Prince. Earlier this year, President Trump singled out Chinese fentanyl as a danger that must be stopped. But before you say, finally, a tweet from Trump we can all agree with, China's top narcotics officers called Trump's comment unacceptable and irresponsible. He went on to say the U.S. had no proof that the fentanyl was coming from China. And so, that same month, the Justice Department released a 43-count indictment of 2 Chinese nationals operating a global opioid and drug manufacturing conspiracy. You see, it's easy to get fentanyl from China. You can literally just order it off Chinese websites and have it shipped to the United States. Please don't do that, by the way. According to the RAND Corporation, almost 80% of the fentanyl seized by U.S. Customs and Border Protection came through the mail, mostly from China. So you might be wondering, how have Chinese authorities gotten away with being a big part of a problem that's killing 70,000 Americans a year? By saying they can't control it. China has technically banned the export of more than 100 synthetic drugs. The problem is, since fentanyl is synthetic, Chinese labs can just change how they make it. That creates a new type of fentanyl that isn't technically banned. Or they can just ignore Chinese laws and they usually don't get caught. Chinese authorities say they can't monitor all the labs in the country, so really what can they do? Except the Chinese government has built the most extensive surveillance state in the history of the world. So if they really wanted to, they could increase their drug enforcement. Maybe they're just too busy arresting political dissidents to deal with minor problems like international drug smugglers. Unfortunately, it's incredibly difficult for U.S. Customs and Border Protection to keep an eye on every package coming from China. This report to the U.S. Senate says, the federal government's policies and procedures are inadequate to prevent the use of the international mail system to ship illegal synthetic opioids into the United States. And keep in mind, it's not just the users themselves who are ordering drugs in the mail. According to the DEA, traffickers can typically purchase a kilogram of fentanyl powder for a few $1,000s from a Chinese supplier, transform it into hundreds of thousands of pills, and sell the counterfeit pills for millions of dollars in profit. And it's not just pills. Street drugs like heroin and cocaine have also been laced with fentanyl powder, which makes them more dangerous. So people who have died from heroin and cocaine overdoses often have fentanyl in their systems too. Now, the U.S. Postal Service has over the past few years tried to increase the surveillance on lightweight packages being shipped from China. But dealers have found a way around it. It's called transshipment. That's where online sellers divert packages through other countries first. So really, to end this practice, enforcement has to begin in China. That's probably why President Trump has made fentanyl a part of the trade war discussions with China. According to this statement from the White House after the G20, President Xi Jinping, in a wonderful humanitarian gesture, has agreed to designate fentanyl as a controlled substance, meaning that people selling fentanyl to the United States will be subject to China's maximum penalty under the law. That sounds great, although the Chinese regime has a long history of not honoring its promises. Back in 2016, the Obama administration said that Chinese authorities had agreed to measures to stop fentanyl from coming to the U.S. But in its official statements or state media reports made at the time, the Chinese government never specified the steps it intended to take, and its follow-up has been patchy at best. So the U.S. government will have to continually pressure Chinese authorities to get them to actually follow through. But the good news for the Communist Party is that even if they have to give up drug warfare, there's still trade warfare, financial warfare, ecological warfare, psychological warfare, smuggling warfare, media warfare, network warfare, technological warfare, resources warfare, economic aid warfare, culture warfare, and international law warfare. So what do you think of China's drug warfare against the United States? Leave your comments below. And remember, YouTube demonetizes videos it considers too controversial. That's why we rely on your support through the crowdfunding website Patreon. Head over to patreon.com/America Uncovered to find out how you can support more episodes of America Uncovered for as little as the price of your daily cup of coffee. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.